For those who may not know, Mike is one of the most successful landscape entrepreneurs in the country. In 2003, he founded the Loving Companies, also known as Loving, but his journey started long before that. As a middle schooler in the late 90s, he began mowing lawns for friends and neighbors, and by the time he graduated high school, he was already diving headfirst into entrepreneurship. What started as a small landscaping business in Charlotte, North Carolina, has grown into a powerhouse. Loving now operates the Southeast, offering everything from custom landscape design and installation to irrigation, hardscaping, and lawn maintenance. But that's not all. Mike has also built one of the largest sod supply networks in the US throughout nextdaysod.com. And in 2024, he launched Next, a proprietary software designed to transform farming, logistics, and customer tracking. But what's more impressive is Mike's why. His calling to change communities and help people. Loving's core values drive everything they do, ensuring that impact, growth, and excellence remain at the forefront of their mission. Mike, your journey and the impact you're making are truly inspiring. I can't wait to dive into the foundation and the influences that have shaped your career. So let's start at the beginning. How would you describe your upbringing and what were some of the key experiences that shaped you?
Thank you. That was like way too much hype. At the end of the day, that's maybe who I aspire to be, but you're too kind. I would say my upbringing was really rooted on work ethic. So my parents both were very hardworking people, and we were raised with kind of an understanding that you can be anything you want to be if you're willing to put in the work that many others aren't willing to put in. So I think it was kind of through that upbringing of nothing's given to you. You earn everything. And if you truly want to build something or become someone that's not in the ordinary, then you're going to have to work harder and you're going to have to put in the time and the effort that others are unwilling. So I would say if there was like one thing that I would look at my upbringing and where my parents ingrained in us like fundamental principles that we operate the business with today, it would be work ethic. So there's many other things, but I think that would probably be the most significant.
Yeah. So for you, whenever you started your business, what made you decide I wanted to continue to do this and not go, the route that most high schoolers take, which is college? Because, I can imagine for some people that would have been, a scary risk to take and kind of going that route. Walk me through your decision and, how your family reacted to that.
Yeah. To be totally blunt, I hated high school. Like I just hated school. I loved if I knew why I was learning something, but my brain, even to this day, really struggles to learn things that I don't know how I'm going to put into practice. So in high school, I had an incredible FFA advisor. So our agriculture teacher was one of my very first mentors. He was instrumental in showing that college is not the only route. Like at the end of the day, he believed that I should have gone to college, in agriculture college, but he also, he believed that I needed to make that decision. And what he did is give the pros and the cons and then left it up to me. I also had a wrestling coach that was one of my first mentors. So if it weren't for wrestling and if it weren't for FFA, I don't even know if I would have made it through high school, if I'm going to be honest. I knew that I wanted to be in business for myself pretty early. I didn't know exactly why at that time. I just knew there was something inside of me. Before I was mowing grass, I was going to Sam's and getting boxes of chocolates that were meant for fundraisers, but I would walk around our neighborhood and try to sell chocolate bars for $1 a piece. And then I got into basketball cards and going and buying basketball cards and trading basketball cards. So I've always kind of had that, like what I look back on now is like an entrepreneurial itch. But I never necessarily knew why. In high school, as the mowing kind of moved from the trailer park that I grew up in to some really nice communities in Charlotte that were paying much more money, I thought, man, there might be something here. So, I'm not charging $4 or $5 a mowing. I'm charging, 15 or 20 or $25 a mowing. And that's where I realized I didn't even know what profit was at that time, but I realized that some cash was starting to accumulate. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with, at the end of the day, not just the money that I was able to make, but just that sense that I'm building something. So when I graduated high school, I was mowing about 100 yards a week. So my best friend and I, after school every day, and then on Saturdays, would go out, and during the growing season, we were mowing grass. And he had the same outlook on college as I did. So when I graduated, I hired him on full time as employee number one. Um, and it was about a month after I graduated high school that my parents felt called to move to Mississippi to be house parents in an orphanage. And so about a month in, um, I had to learn how to go from living under my parents' roof and only having a $74 a month commercial lawnmower payment to now a little bit of added responsibility. So I had to cover their mortgage, and there were some other expenses that I had to cover. So then I began to understand, kind of in a simple form, business, what's coming in, have a mentor that says, what comes in your left pocket is in revenue, and then what has to go to your right pocket in paying costs, and then what's left in your left pocket is what you've made. So I began to kind of get the simple like foundation of business. In 2003, 2004, the economy was great. Out of the gates for the first year or two, I didn't understand why my parents didn't own their own business. I thought this is so easy. There's great money in it, and it's really enjoyable. So I didn't understand, like, why did my dad work at Amco Transmissions? Why did my mom work at Founders? Like, why didn't they go full force into business when they were my age? And then this thing called the recession came along, and I realized that business is much harder than what I thought. So we got into doing some pretty great landscaping jobs pretty early on. So lawn care became a part of the business. And then we began doing some pretty high-end custom residential projects. So that became a pretty big part of the business. But between 2008, 2009, we went from an average job size of around $80,000 down to an average job size of like $5,500. So the folks that were getting home equity lines and that were leveraging debt for their backyard projects, they went away like overnight. So it was kind of in that moment that, oh, geez, like I'm not making as much money as I thought. And where we had to begin to understand how to run a business. My dream when I graduated high school was to build a business by the age of 60 that was doing $3 million dollars a year. And then my goal was to retire at age 60. So I never had this grand plan. I wish I could say that it was all part of a strategy, but I believe there's a higher calling that if that purpose is on your life, at the end of the day, things unfold that you don't even know, but it's all part of that journey. I look back and say, well, why do we keep growing? Why do we want to keep building the business? And that was around probably 2010, 2011, when we realized one, business is much more difficult than we realized. So this is not as easy as we thought. And two, if we truly want to still growing, which we felt called to do, even in a downturn, then we have to begin to tie it to like why we're wanting to do that. And I think it was in that process of determining why are we wanting to grow the business. And for us, we just simply said, we just want to help people. At that point, I had grown up in a very, very modest household, and I had things that I never thought I would have in life. So, and my parents taught us to have fear of wealth, not chase after it. So they would use examples of different folks that were around our rather family or friends that were very wealthy, but they were also miserable, or at the end of the day, weren't functional. So I was never chasing after wealth. It was kind of in that moment after the recession that it's like, hey, we just went from an $80,000 average job to a $5,500 average job. But that pivot that we made enabled us to keep growing when a lot of other companies were shrinking. So we were able to hire people as a $7-8 million a year company from $100 million a year companies that never would have come to us being that size of a company. But because they got laid off, because the $100 million company they were working at, had serious reductions. So we were able to get talent during that season that enabled us to grow. And that's where it kind of clicked for us that, hey, if we can attract top talent and if we can serve our customers and create raving fans, there's something big that can happen. And if we tie it to a purpose, then there's something really big that can happen. So, I wish I could say that our journey is all a plan, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's filled with peaks and it's filled with valleys. And it's the valleys that have guided us into pivots. It's the valleys that's caused us to take a step back. It's the valleys that's caused us to galvanize around our mission because that was a really hard season or that adversity was really challenging. So it's not all a plan. And I think sometimes, like us entrepreneurs, I put myself in this box, like we want everything mapped out. And I think a plan is really, really important. I just before this meeting wrapped up a meeting with our chief of staff, and that's what the whole meeting was around is the strategy, the plan, and the scorecard. So I think it's really important, but I think we also have to hold things sometimes a little bit looser than we like to just go with the flow. So I look at most companies, I think, when you go from an $80,000 average job to a $5,500 average job, they would say, well, this sucks. Like, this is terrible. But for us, number one, it gave us growth. Number two, it introduced us to Pulte Homes. We would have never started doing home building work if that setback of the custom jobs that went away, if that setback didn't happen, I never would have been introduced to Pulte Homes. And we never would have begun doing home building, I don't think. So I can look at that now. And again, the setbacks, like super frustrating in the moment. Like we're always going through setbacks in our organization. There's always some department, some division, some business unit that's going through setbacks. We've just been able to begin to look at it and not take it lightly because nobody likes adversity, but to reframe it to say, hey, some of our greatest, and it sounds so cliche and so cheesy, but it is so true that some of our greatest setbacks have created some of our greatest setups. And it doesn't feel that way in the moment. And sometimes it takes a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years. There's times it takes a lot of time to have that clarity in the rearview mirror that, man, I'm glad that we weren't pigeonholed into just doing backyard upfits in Lake Wiley, South Carolina. Like, I'm glad that TGK wasn't the only place that we were limited to. But if I'm honest, if the economy didn't crash, if those people no longer could afford to do the projects in their backyard, we probably would have set a limitation on our business that was far less than ultimately what we were intended to accomplish. So I guess I would sum it up by just saying a lot of times you got to roll with it and you can have the best plan, but things are always going to come up. Like adversity is always going to happen. We work outside. All of our farms are exposed to the elements. So there's these things called hurricanes and there's all of these things that happen. And I don't think it's possible to plan every single one of them. I think it comes down to how you respond to it. And there's seasons that we respond fast and there's seasons we look back and we're like, damn, like we should have been a lot quicker on this. Like we should have, picked up this slack a lot quicker. So I would just say it's all part of the journey.
Absolutely. There's so many, it's a beautiful testament. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things that, I'm thinking about that you talked about is understanding your why and why that's so important, because it allows you to, even though you don't have a plan, you have a guide of why you want to do things. And just hearing you talk, it's like that glass half full. it doesn't matter if there's, things going on, finding the opportunity in that setback. What can we do to pivot, and being flexible and being able to grow? So thank you so much for that. People are really big into morning routines. I'm sure you've seen all the viral videos these days. Is there something that you do as a CEO and entrepreneur that kind of gets your day going? Do you believe in like a morning routine, or
Yeah.
walk us through that?
Oh, I am. Like, I'm pretty big on routines and cadences. So I think it's important. I think that it creates a little bit of structure. My mornings are typically where I want to tackle like the most challenging things going on in the business. So I really try to do everything I can to leave that morning time when my mind is freshest, to tackle what the biggest challenges are. So I know people that do the opposite. Like, if they were to start their day with the biggest challenges, their day would be wrecked. So I don't think that there's a right way or wrong way. I think it really comes down to like how God wired your brain and how you operate. So I think the structure is important. I think each leader has to kind of take the structure that works best for them and implement it. I would just say that having some structure is what's critical. What that structure looks like, again, I think that's left up to each individual leader.
Yeah. I want to kind of touch on what you said about failures, and you've grown a lot from failures. As a entrepreneur who has been doing this for 2 years, just 2 years, there's been times where I have said, I don't know if I can continue doing this. Like, the pressure is a lot. I've gone on my knees and said, God, help me with, this, that I'm kind of going through. And an hour later, something happens where you're over the moon. And then, it's like those peak and valleys that you talked about. Walk me through those times where you've had those like moments. Like, how long does it take you to bounce back from a setback, and what is your process like? What are the things that you do to make yourself feel better about what you're going through? Because sometimes as the CEO, you know you don't have another CEO. Of course you have like a team, but sometimes it can be isolating to process everything that you're going through.
Yeah.
Walk me through that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I definitely don't have it all figured out. I mean, it's a journey. So, what has probably helped me the most is mentors. I think perspective is often clouded, like when you're fighting the fires. So, one of my mentors says you can't read the label when you're inside the jar. So, when we're inside the jar and I'm really focused on our farming operations, or I'm really focused on our landscaping operations or our outdoor living operations, the reality is my perspective is clouded. And whether I want to agree with it or not, to a certain degree, have blinders on because I'm inside the jar. So I can't read necessarily the label. I can look out the jar, but the reality is I am inside the jar. So I think when you invite people into your journey that are outside the jar, and when you're able to have just a raw and kind of unfiltered relationship. So I've searched for folks that have done what I aspire to do. And that doesn't mean they're within the landscaping industry. As a matter of fact, the majority of my mentors are not in the landscaping industry. They're not in the sod farming industry, but they've done something that I aspire and we as an organization aspire to do. So I seek those folks out. And then I try to be super raw. So I try to, like, when life sucks, I try to just sit down and say, life really sucks. Like, I'm really feeling ineffective as a leader. I'm really feeling like I'm letting our team down. I'm really wondering if I'm the right leader to take them from this point to that point. And I think when you open up that dialogue, and it's not just a putting your pride aside, but it takes kind of some guts to, so take pride aside. It just takes guts to lay everything out and to do that with someone that you really admire because you're kind of showing up saying, like, I really suck at this and I'm hoping you can help. But what I've learned is that those people went through the same seasons. Like, there is not a single mentor that I have that has not been through crushing pain, that hasn't been through valleys that are hard as hell. As a matter of fact, the mentors that I meet with will will say that it was that valley that I built this corporation, that I built this impact, that I built whatever it is that they've built. So that kind of it ends up like again, it repositions the failure or the setback or the adversity to look at it through a lens that says like this sucks, but this is not the end. The reality is that this business unit is failing, or our aspired outcome for customer satisfaction is falling short, but that's not the end. So that's just the guide to say that if we want our customer satisfaction to be 95% or higher and we're at 88%, then what are the tangible things that we can do in order to get to 95%? Not the concepts and theories. And I think when you have mentors that have gone through those seasons, then they can give you perspective. I mean, oftentimes I feel kind of like a fool because I'll sit down over a drink or lunch or coffee, and the answer is so simple, but I didn't have it. But because someone was outside of the organization could look at it and say, I think you're getting a little emotional on this one. Like you're thinking with your heart. Like, did you think about this? And it's like, damn, like that's common sense, right? But I think as entrepreneurs, especially if you have like a burden that you're carrying that you feel is your purpose. And I say that like burden in a way that like I do believe purpose has a burden. I know you might be thinking like, wow, like that sounds super negative. But I think when you have a calling on your life or your organization, it's a responsibility. And I think oftentimes when we feel that responsibility, it can, in and of itself, it can discourage you. So then you add in adversity, you add in setbacks, you add in team members that like let you down or that you feel like you're letting them down. And now all of a sudden you're starting to see a stop sign when it's really just like a turn signal. Like it's just like, hey, we need to pivot over this way. You know, I mentioned on the custom projects moving and the reduction in average jobs. And for like maybe 3 weeks, I had one of our largest customers that went bankrupt. This is while the economy was going down, and our average jobs went from 80,000 to 5,500. And we were operating out of a construction trailer at that time, and there was many mornings that I would walk behind the construction trailer and throw up. I was so in such a wreck. But then I found a mentor that had been through a recession, and that recession actually built his business into a massive organization. And once I saw that, it was like, okay, this isn't final. So the reality is this is not the end of the road. This just means that we've got to make some adjustments. So I think a perspective is so important, but perspective is so hard. Like you're very hard on yourself. I just met you,
Yeah.
but I can tell you're very hard on yourself because of the way that you're approaching your business. And that is a superpower because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have the dream, but they don't have the grit. They have the dream, they don't have the purpose, right? So what I would just say is like find folks, whether it's in your industry or whether it's outside the industry. And and again, anyone who's had sustainable success wants to help other people. There's not been one person that has had sustainable success that I reach out to and say, will you be my mentor? I'm not talking about paid consulting, just will you be my mentor? There's not one person that's had sustainable success that said no. There have been people that have said no, but they just were on the mountaintop for a minute. So they didn't build anything that actually had sustainable significance. I saw their highlight and was like, oh, snap, I want to be like them. But then as I looked in the rear view, realized they probably weren't going to be a good mentor because they just learned how to have a one hit wonder. Like I'm trying to have albums, not just like one song. And I think, again, it's just, yeah, I think perspective, I think it's so important and something that us entrepreneurs lack so often. And it causes us, yeah, I think to be defeated, demoralized, frustrated, discouraged. Yeah.
Absolutely. I can relate to that so much. And I think being able to stand in front of that mirror as a entrepreneur and being truthful about what you see is so important. Um, I recently met with my mentor at the beginning of the year, and he mentioned, what are the things that are getting you into trouble? And I found out that there's things from my childhood that you don't think about how that affects you and how you react or how move about your business, that you have to come to terms and understand and learn how to move forward from, whether it was trauma. For me, it was a really hard high school years, with like just I went to a private Catholic school, and it was, people who lived completely different lives from me. And I felt a sense of like rejection and, just a difficulty trying to being able to fit in. And for me, it was like being able to reach out to people like yourself and create this podcast to lose that fear of like business development, which is so crucial to, a business. And I was lucky enough for the first 2 years, my business grew on referrals. And it's crazy to say that I did zero business development. But it was that, light bulb that you said. It's so easy and it's like common sense. And I knew that I had that fear of reaching out to people. But when he said it, and when he mentioned his thing, with his childhood thing that made it so difficult for him to process things in his company, and how long it took him to figure it out years later. And for me, he helped me in my second year,
Yeah.
which is the testament of mentorship. And one of the questions I have for you: how often do you like to speak with your mentors? How many mentors do you like to have at a time?
Yeah, it's interesting and it's varied in seasons. So ultimately, when I'm trying to search for a mentor, it's like, what am I trying to achieve? Like, what is it that's needed? There's times that, we're expanding rapidly in an area, and I need somebody who has expanded their geographical footprint and how they did that and how they maintain their culture and how they ensured that their Big Mac tasted the same on different sides of the state. There's times that like I need financial wisdom, or I need somebody who really understands the financial side. I'm not the financial whiz, so there's seasons where I'm searching for, hey, can you give some vision into this? So I think it really depends on the season. One thing I have learned is to make sure you don't have multiple voices on the same subject at the same time. I think that for a while I thought I want all the different perspectives, but what I realized is that it kind of created a tension where you felt like you're in a tug of war. And I think because especially purpose and culture and impact, like all those things are, I don't want to say subjective, but there's 1,000 ways to skin that cat. And ultimately, you have to find the right way for yourself. And I do think it's important to have different voices. I just think once you boil it down and you say, hey, this is someone who's going to speak wisdom into our organization or into my life, that you just make sure that there's not competing voices. And I think sometimes we can have competing voices that aren't even necessarily quote unquote mentors, but maybe someone who's sitting on the leadership team or and that's where I think just kind of defining like, hey, who do I want to search for? I don't think it's a complicated process, but I do think it's in depth. And I think what you don't want is like the superficial. If you're just searching for people that have only succeeded, they're really not going to help you because they only know how to win. And someone that only knows how to win doesn't really have the fortitude to be able to weather the loss. And I think it's great companies that don't grow and that win every year. Like, I think that's great. It's not the calling that I have on my life, and it's not what I believe Loving's mission is. So we believe that we're meant to grow, and a part of growth is failure. So I have to make sure that I incorporate mentors that have been through some really bad lows. Because if we really want to climb to the mountaintop, then we really better get comfortable in the valley. And I think, determining what is it financial? Is it leadership? Is it operational? Is it marketing? What? And then finding, hey, who's someone that's built something that's not just significant, but that have gone through some seasons, they tried them. And then what you find is like what you just mentioned, your mentor, I don't know how many years it took them, but it took them a whole lot longer than you. I've got a mentor that says, all I want to do is minimize the dumb tax that you pay. You're going to pay some dumb tax, Mike, because you're very hard headed. But I just want to minimize that dumb tax to make sure that when you decide to pay that dumb tax, when you decide to make that decision, that mistake, that I've educated you on my experience of making that mistake. So if I've touched the oven, I don't see the need in you touching the oven unless you're just going to be hard headed. And the hard headed side of mine at times has gone against what a mentor recommends. And most often I burn my hand. So I'll say, oh no, our business is a little different than yours. So your business kind of struggled on this because of X, Y, and Z, but ours isn't going to struggle on this because of A, B, and C. And so we move forward. And then I'm oftentimes sitting back over that beer or coffee or lunch with that mentor saying, you were right. So I think if you can find mentors that can lessen the dumb tax that you pay in building a business, then it accelerates. A lot of people talk about they want to grow fast, but at the end of the day, the speed at which you grow comes down to like the people that are around you. So if you have people that have been there and done that, then it's going to accelerate you and be like rocket fuel compared to a whole bunch of people that haven't experienced what you're asking for wisdom on.
Absolutely. One of the things that, I would love for you to tell our audience, the people that are, struggling to find that mentor or reaching out because they feel like they don't know what that mentor has to gain from this relationship or how to thank that mentor. What has your experience been, in what they get out of this relationship that you form with them? And for you, if you've been a mentor to others.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, when you've created significance or if you've created success and it's sustainable, right? So it's not like a one-hit wonder, but it's like there's something that's been created that's very unique. Like I haven't found one mentor that does not want to help others to experience that. And if you have an organization that's tied to something beyond profit, so if you have an organization that's tied to a purpose that makes an impact, then that kind of just adds that much more to folks that want to help out. I think you've got to do a good job of reaching out. I have folks that I meet with, and I learn as much from them as they learn from me, right? But I often tell them to say, I want to go find a mentor at a big company like your mentor here or your mentor there. But they kind of do a half-assed job of reaching out. And it's like that doesn't work because although that CEO or business owner or chairman or whatever the position may be, although they want to help you, if you have a box that's really sloppy wrapped, you can have the most beautiful David Yurman jewelry inside of it. But when I get that box and it looks like it's fallen down a 10-story stairwell, like I'm automatically going to kind of be like, that's beat up. You can have all the incredible greatness inside of it, but if you're not going to make it in front of that CEO to determine that they want to help, then I think what you end up with is you probably don't have success. So I always, depending on who it is, try to come up with creative ways of how I connect. So for a while, we were making handmade wooden boxes. There was a company in Charlotte. They would make handmade wooden boxes. I would do my research to understand what is this person interested in? Oh, they're interested in that. Oh, they love this book. Have a handmade wooden box, something that someone would want to put on their desk or on their shelf, and just have a handwritten note inside that just simply says, I admire what you've built. And I would just absolutely be delighted if I could get 1 hour of your time whenever it works for you. And 99% that 1 hour meeting turns into maybe a 2 or 3 hour first time meeting. And then you end up with a relationship. Because if you've done your work to search out for someone who's had sustainable success, then their next season often doesn't look like creating the next set of wealth. It's it's impacting the next generation. And folks that have had massive success, they they desire that. Like that is what fuels them. That's what gives them energy or gives them purpose in their next season of life. So I think it's just a matter of find who it is, figure out how to get in front of them. Not necessarily how to get in front of their executive assistant, but how do I break through the noise that's hitting this CEO or the noise that's hitting, so I can get them who ultimately makes the decision to say, I want to spend an hour to meet with this person and do it. Just do it. I think sometimes, we have this analysis by paralysis. How do I do this? I overcomplicate it. Just do it. The worst thing that could happen is that this person who's not your mentor today is not your mentor tomorrow. That's the worst thing that could happen. The best thing that could
Absolutely.
happen is that you could get connected with someone that makes a massive impact in your journey.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't forgive myself if I didn't ask you at least one question regarding recruiting. As someone who loves interviewing and all things people, walk me through, you talked about hiring this amazing talent from bigger companies. And one of the most important thing, if not the most important thing when building a successful company like yours is the people, right? And bringing on the right people. So two questions. What is your favorite interview question? And how do you decide this person is a good fit for this role and, the company? Because sometimes they can have all of the experience, but it's not the right fit. So how do you get to understand that? Walk me through it.
So again, we don't have it figured out. I think we are a work in progress. What I will say that has worked well for us is making sure that we're searching for the heartbeat, not just the competency. So let's make sure that this person aligns with wanting to be a part of something that whose purpose is to positively impact the lives of other people. I think, when you ask that question in an interview, nobody's going to say, no, I don't like positively impacting. We break it down even a little bit further. One of our core values is embrace intensity. So I think that, nobody is going to say, I don't want to positively impact. But when people realize that positively impacting sometimes means really, really fast growth or really hard setbacks, then all of a sudden you get to rate on a chart of how important is it for you to impact. And if your importance on a scale of 1 to 10 is only like 2 or 3, then as soon as we hit the first pothole, like your whole car's falling apart. Where if you're an 8 or a 9, it's, ooh, that hurt. This is painful, but our purpose is greater, right? We're on this planet for a reason that's beyond this. And although this is a very painful season or this adversity is a hard blow, the addicted that are getting clean because of the support that we give to this outreach partner, it's worth it. The homeless that are being put in homes, it's worth it, right? The immigrant that at the end of the day is helping to be transitioned in an honorable way, it's worth it. I think if you have people that gather around that truly are have a deep desire for that, then it allows you to get through the seasons. As far as what tools do we use? And again, it's an area that we're putting quite a bit of focus on right now, is making sure that we are doing everything that we can to interview in a way that translates to the greatest level of success possible. I think there's been seasons over the past couple years to where our focus has simply been on filling the seats, and it's bit us in the butt, if I'm going to be totally honest with you. And that's not necessarily that we brought on bad people. It's just, we have something that we call just the loving way. It's not a right thing. It's not a wrong thing. It's just our way. And when we bring people on that aren't aligned with that, then it is like grinding gears. Because again, if I'm pushing you up a hill because your purpose meter is 2 or 3 and I need it to be 8 or 9, then nothing is going to work. Like none of it's going to make sense. It's all going to feel like a foreign language. Where if you're aligned on that, which is what drives us, then ultimately everything else kind of falls behind. A tool that our chief of staff introduced us to that I think is an absolute game changer is the culture index.
I love Culture Index. What's yours? Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, so I'm obviously a very high A. So, I'm a run as fast as you possibly can. And when you run into the wall, just get back up. And I have the tendency of shoot, aim. So I tell our team all the time, it's not kind of in the loving way, it's not right or wrong, it's who you are. So we've really gathered around this idea of just pressing into our God-given talents. That means that you recognize your weaknesses and that we build out a team that has a good variety of everything. And that at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, we're able to bring people into our organization, not because they interviewed well, but bring them into a position because we know that this position has these requirements. So if we need a driver, and at the end of the day, they're, a low A, then chances are we're going to drive that bus. And it really shouldn't be us complaining about why we're driving your bus when we knew bringing you in that you weren't a driver. Or if we have someone that we're needing to put into a position that has ambiguity in the role or a lot of diversity in the work mix, like we need you to have some high EUs. And if you don't, then we know that you can't operate outside of your like confines very well. So I think like to me, I'm a pretty simple-minded person. And Culture Index is such a simple approach. I think some of the like personality assessments are so complicated, and I'm not saying they're not good by any means, but they're so complicated that they allow people to begin to give the answers that they think the system wants rather than just reveal who they truly are. And that's where again we've tried to say like, hey, we just want you like ultimate quality of life. It doesn't come from like, Taco Tuesday and, having a fridge full of beer. Like it comes from you just operating in your God-given talents. Like every morning when you wake up, either you're gonna like jump out of bed excited, regardless of what's going on, because it's tied to what your God-given talents are, or you're gonna get up and just be like, not real excited. And that doesn't mean that there's not days that don't suck. And there's plenty of days that suck when you're living in your God-given talents. That's a part of growth. But I think when you remove trying to do things or trying to be someone, again, this doesn't mean you're not supposed to grow, you're not supposed to develop yourself. But if I'm sitting here trying to devote my time to being a financial wizard, then I'm mistaken. That's just not my God-given talents. What I've got to do is I've got to surround myself with people that are really brilliant in that side of the business. And that financial wizard is probably not a visionary. They're probably not somebody that maybe has a specific vision on what culture we want to build or what impact that we want to have or what our BHAG needs to be, right? So, but it takes everybody. I mean, it takes every single aspect. When we first rolled out the Culture Index, for whatever reason, and I think it's because we kind of made fun, which probably was a mistake, but we kind of make fun of like, oh, you're a low A. So yeah, we kind of got to drive you. And we would do it in a playing way. But what happened is it began to give this like, what's not good if you're a low A? No, it's great. Because if everybody was just running into walls and getting up and running into a wall and getting up, like it takes people to say, hey, we just ran into this wall. Here's the 19 steps that we're going to implement in our policy to prevent running into that wall again. Here's the training modules. Here's where they're located. Here are the weekly tailgate talks that we're going to implement. If you don't have that, then you just have a whole bunch of drivers. So yeah, I think Culture Index is pretty amazing. I know a lot of people use DISC and
Yeah.
other things, but for us, the Culture Index, pick the word, that best describes you is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing what Culture Index, is able to do. For me, it's like, okay, let me look at the DNA of someone. You look at what they've done and what their background is, but when you talk to so many people on the phone, I already know. I'm like, oh, this is a craftsman, or this is a trailblazer, or it's their personality and where they're comfortable being. And just how you mentioned, it's important to understand who you are, and then having the right people on your team. For me, I need people with that high attention to detail, to be able to help me and be successful. And we need everyone, because, not everyone is perfect in every single thing. The last big question that I have for you, I have a couple of other rapid fire fun questions, but wanted to, ask you, what do you want, like, your legacy to be when all of this is over? You talked about retiring at 60. You understand your why, but when all of this is said and done, you've impacted so many lives. What do you want to be remembered for?
Retiring at 60 was my high school goal. That has since changed. We run at a pretty hard pace. So as a leadership team, we've galvanized around the idea of a little bit of a shorter career. So we'd rather run faster, further faster, than to be at a more like kind of middle of the road pace. So just clarity there. As far as legacy, I think ultimately our mission is to create a positive impact. Again, we're pretty simple-minded people, but we translate that in a number of different ways. So first, we want to positively impact our team. So we want to make sure that our team is better off by work because they're a part of our team. And there's been seasons that I can say, absolutely. And then there's seasons where I can say, our company did not contribute to you being better because you were part of the team. Rather, it's because you weren't the right fit, or rather because we were in a rapid growth expansion, going through growing pains or adversity. But it all hinges back to create a positive impact. So if you're an outreach partner, we want to know, what impact are you making? Not what initiatives do you have, not what goals do you have, but what is the impact that you're making? And the way we do that is we take 10% of our profits and we give them to our outreach partners. So if you're making an impact and we're profitable, then the reality is that we're going to be able to do the work that we believe we were put on this planet through the work we do. I think sometimes I chat with folks and they create the purpose or the impact as like its whole initiative. And for us, we never felt that we were called to be creators of impact. We felt called to be contributors. We never felt that we wanted to start a bunch of nonprofits. We felt like there are plenty of nonprofits that are out there. There's just too little contribution going to them. So we simply said, we believe it's sustainable to take 10% of our profit and to supply it to those outreach partners that are making an impact. Our job is to be really kick-ass sod farmers, to be incredible landscapers, to think outside the box with our outdoor living programs and our designs, our products. That's what we think our job is. We do not think our job is to start a nonprofit that ends homelessness. There are incredible nonprofits that are working their butts off to end homelessness. They're doing great work. They're under-resourced. So let's figure out how we can contribute to them by us focusing on what we do best. Again, oftentimes I think people think that, to create a positive impact or to create a purpose around my organization, like I've got to do it from A to Z. And it's like, no, like I think most of us are to operate doing what God called us to do. And if we sat here and over the past however many years said that our goal was to start nonprofits, I could almost guarantee you that our impact would have been significantly less than if we simply said, we're going to take 10% of our profit and we're going to give it to nonprofit partners. And our outreach partners then can do the work. And if they're not doing the work, then we don't want to support them. Like, we care about what you're doing to make people's lives better, because the ultimate legacy that you mentioned is just that we can sit back and say that this community is better because we had an operation there. That means that our team, that means that our outreach partners, that means that our vendors. So that's the aspired outcome. That's the aspired legacy. Then it's a matter of us doing what? Making profit. So when we grow too fast and the profit takes a hit, then indirectly we're not fulfilling our mission. So now let's kind of re-engineer this to say growth for the sake of growth that doesn't have profit, it causes us to lack our purpose and the reason that we believe that we're growing our organization. So when we see really, really fast growth that impacts our bottom line, we now are able to look at it and say, how can we be more calculated? Like, how can we not trade our purpose, which comes through profit, for the sake of growth? And if it's a growth season that we believe, hey, this period from here to here, man, it's going to be an investment and it's going to hit the bottom line. And I think that that's okay. We don't have this fully figured out. I think that's okay, as long as it is very, very structured. And hey, for the next 6 months, this division is going to experience some reduced margins because of these 2 or 3 initiatives that are going on to grow. So I think ultimately it's pretty simple. Is the team better because of loving? Are our communities better because of loving? And if we can say yes to that, then I feel like we will have wildly succeeded at what our goals are.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. I can ask you so many more questions, but to come to an end here, just a couple of rapid fire questions for you. Your favorite Bible verse that fuels your grind?
Yes.
What would that be?
So we have 320, it's 420, totally inappropriate on some of our swag. So it's actually Ephesians 3:20. So we've marked through the 4. So it's kind of a play on, we're not smoking grass, we grow grass. But I think ultimately it's a verse that, we kind of played around with swag, but it's a verse that it encourages me. And I think, I will follow that up with, I think that there's, we're not the Bible thumpers that are going to have verses sitting on people's desks. We want to show God through the love that we have. I think that there's enough Christians that are talking about being Christians. I think there's too few Christians that are actually showing the heartbeat and that are showing like, man, there's something different about this person. There's something different about how they're operating, or there's something different about how they're approaching conversations. There's something different about. So I value your question, but from our perspective, you will never see that we wear our beliefs, our maybe I shouldn't say beliefs, but you'll never see us pushing Christianity on any of our team. Never. My goal, I think ultimately the goal would be that people would be able to see, man, something's different there, and I want to learn a little bit more. And we've seen people whose lives have radically been changed, not because of the Bible reading plan that we put them on, but because we came alongside them and we supported them when they needed the help. Yeah.
That's amazing. Your favorite outdoor tool you secretly geek out over?
I have a new Crest backpack blower, and it's pretty amazing. Shameless plug for Crest. It's a backpack blower. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but
That's awesome. One thing your employees would roast you for?
oh man, where do you start? Where do you start? I would say, like, I'm a pretty big dreamer and I'm unapologetic for the dream. So I would say they often are like, okay, Mike, let's, bring it back to planet Earth. So yeah, that was my
I
idea.
love that. Favorite song to blast in the truck?
I'm big on elevation worship. So at the end of the day, Sons of Sunday is a new part of elevation worship, and it's pretty amazing. I also like, it's not just that. I feel like that's almost like now I'm falling right into the box of what a Christian listens to. I'm listening. Let's see, what is on my playlist right now? Let's just Let's have fun.
Let's take a look.
Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny right now. The new Bad Bunny album is pretty great.
Hey, what's your favorite song on the Bad Bunny album?
I don't really know the names of the songs, if I'm going to be honest with you. I love the new album. I love kind of just the vibes of it. We often find ourselves
for
out
sure
listening to.
See, you just gained like 10 points easily on the Bad Bunny.
Bad Bunny. I figured that would be the opposite.
All right, last one. Outside of being a CEO, what other role in your organization would you say that you would do the best at or enjoy the most? Whether it's a project manager, account manager, like what do you think would be that one role?
That's really hard. Like, there's a lot of aspects that I like, but I don't know that I would like it fully. So I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm sure I would enjoy tons of different roles in the organization, but it would probably just be aspects of those roles. If I were to boil it down to one, what great questions.
What do you think you would be the best at?
I think maybe our help desk. Like, I really, really love the customer service aspect. I like the whole raving fan mentality. Like, I love interacting with customers. When they're angry, I don't love it as much, but I genuinely enjoy interacting with customers.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mike. I can go on and on and on of, just your questions and your insights. And it has been such an enjoyable hour for me. And, I wish you all of the success, and I can't wait to see everything that you guys are doing this year. So thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.